What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is, because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews, and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so, into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer, or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Granger Forson, www.bizsmart-gloucestershire.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. This time on ScaleUp Radio, I speak with Paul James, the owner of CAP Business Clubs. CAP is a networking business, and they're based around Colford, but is now nationwide. Paul started CAP in 2011 when he was doing some marketing for a new venue and had the idea that the fantastic room was ideal for a networking meeting. He's now grown it to over 5 groups, though through the pandemic, they did move on to Zoom. What I love about Paul's story is about how he built businesses before CAP and had learned from them to bring new strengths to develop CAP, even when years ago he did not think the idea of networking was very good at all. As always, we cover a lot of ground, including networking brings new skills to you as a business owner. Collaboration with your competition can bring great benefits, and thinking you know it all is a sure way to lose a business you have built. What is so interesting about this conversation with Paul is how he plans to keep building CAP for the benefits of its members so they can all become successful. I know you'll get something out of this episode, so let's go over and listen to Paul. Hello, Paul James, and welcome to ScaleUp Radio. If you'd like to introduce yourself and your business.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me along. Granger, I really appreciate that. I am Paul James, and I run CAP Business Clubs, which I think basically is another kind of networking group for like-minded business owners to help them grow their businesses. I think perhaps where CAP maybe differs from some of the other networking organizations out there is that we tend not to measure our success in pounds, although of course we do have our fair share of success with that. But our main focus is on support, it's on learning, and it's also on collaboration in various forms as well. Just to elaborate on those 3 things, I think support at the moment, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Granger, at the moment, it's really important for businesses to get support because, especially the last 3 years, the world has been a little bit more bonkers perhaps than it usually is. It's always bonkers, but, it's maybe at the moment, it's a little bit crazier than usual. We've got wars in the cost of living and all sorts of negatives going on. And I think it's good to get that balance. You'd need that little bit of positivity coming in, and sometimes, as your business just doesn't go up in a straight line. The graph doesn't go in a straight line. Sometimes you get bumpy roads. Sometimes you've got to smash down brick walls, and sometimes that's just really nice when somebody picks you up, dusts you down, and says, something like, "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right. We're behind you. You can do this." And I think that is a huge thing, especially at the moment. And learning as well. I think people have come to accept now that we don't know everything, and when you're running a business, especially when you start, you kind of, if you take a corporate organization would be a good example. They have an accounts department, they have a sales department, they have a marketing department, and you've got to be all those things as a sole trader, and many of our members are sole traders. So it's really good to get yourself amongst a really good diverse range of people with all sorts of skill sets, because you can learn so much from them. So learning is really, really important for us. And of course, collaboration which comes in many forms. It could be that you're collaborating because you've got the accountant in your group and they're going to be your accountant now, and the printer's going to do all your kind of print marketing and all that kind of stuff. Or it might even be that you even, say, well, do you know what, we could go into business together because your skills and my skills combined, that we could create some opportunities that perhaps we couldn't on our own. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Obviously, leads are still a giant part, and we still do very well with those. It's all part and parcel, but perhaps we don't focus that as our number one priority, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, so very much so. And, we talk about the scale-up journey, and in between each of the ladders as you grow and build your teams, and it's all about team size, you get stuck in the valleys of death. So what you're talking about there is helping business owners as they're moving through their early part of their journey, and small sole traders you're talking about. You can get stuck if you don't know what you're doing to build the success that you need. So, yeah, very much so. Fully understand it's definitely not a straight line, as people always think in terms of doing that. Yes, very much. And the collaboration of helping people learn is a very important part. Also, the way that we organise ourselves in terms of the peer-to-peer discussions around business, etc. So, CAP, tell us about CAP. When did it start? Why did you create it?
Well, to be honest with you, Granger, it was kind of by accident. I've been doing a little bit of networking. I've done quite a bit of networking between 2007 and 2011. I had a marketing business and I did quite a lot of networking, and I learned the value of it. And then we sold the business, and I kind of stopped for a while, and I scored a marketing contract for the Colford area partnership at the main place in Colford. And the contract was for 1 year. It was European funded money. And it was for 1 year, and it was to help. I probably should explain what they do there. They've got meeting rooms and offices and training rooms and a big hall, and so they need to hire those out to help the community, and that included the business community. So they hired me in for a year to get it off the ground. It was built in 2010, and they took me on in 2012. So they were still very, very new. And it just so happened one day I was sat in the meeting room and I was looking around and I thought, this is just such a great room. They've got a big TV screen up on the wall. They've got flip charts. They've got whiteboards. They've got all the coffee making facilities. They've got everything you need for a really good meeting. And I thought this would be a great place to have a network meeting. So the next monthly meeting that we had with the Colford area partnership, I suggested this to them, and they said, "Well, have you got any experience running network clubs?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't got any experience at all." And they said, "Well, would you give it a go?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And luckily, I had made some good contacts because I'd done some networking previously. So I had a ring round and gathered up a few people, and we had, I don't know, about 20 people at the first meeting, and it went very well. So we decided to continue and did that on a weekly basis. And then after about 6 months, we'd set a limit of about 25 members, I think it was, per group because of the size of the room. And then after about 6 months, we had about a dozen people knocking on the door saying, "Look, we'd love to join this." So 6 months later, I started another one. And it was about a year afterwards we started a third one, and et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the first year, obviously my contract came to an end because the European money that funded it came to an end. So it was kind of bye Paul. But they said, regarding the business clubs, we really don't want them. Would you like to take them over as a business? And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm really enjoying doing this. So yes, please. So It kind of fell into my lap. Yeah. I'd love to tell you a story about how I generated it all from scratch and all by myself, but it wasn't like that. It kind of just fell into place all on its own. which is great.
So this is about 2011 then, roughly, is that right? So
it was 2012.
2012, okay, so you're a year in, and you said, okay, let's start a business collaboration. Was it called CAP then in terms of business clubs?
Well, it was called CAP, and it was called CAP because I was running it on behalf of the Colford Area Partnership. So when I took it over as a business, I had to figure out what CAP actually meant now, because it had now established itself. And so we called it Collaborate and Prosper. But it did take me a while to come up with that one, maybe a couple of years, but we got there in the end. So
you started then, with a group of people. You're talking about probably 2 groups running by then. So what was the journey next, and probably how did it happen through COVID? What will happen next? So take us through the next few years then.
Yeah, well, we started out with 1 group. 6 months later, we had 2, and within a year from that, we had 3, and that kind of maxed it out really, because Colford is only a small market town in the Forest of Dean, so the catchment area is not huge. So we were kind of felt that maybe, we should be counting our blessings that we did actually get 3 groups up and running, which we did. And it stayed like that for the first 7 years. And then, of course, the unthinkable happened, and a pandemic came along. And I can remember when the pandemic hit, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because I rely on live meetings. This is my business, and this could be the end. And then someone suggested that you tried Zoom, and so I thought, right, okay. And at that time, I'd never ever even used a camera on WhatsApp to do a WhatsApp call. I didn't know whether the camera on my laptop actually worked. I'd never used it, but we had a look, and lo and behold, Zoom was nice and easy, and it worked. And the great thing about Zoom was it broke down all the geographical boundaries that we had before. So, typically before we would have local Forest of Dean businesses, maybe, a few from Monmouth, Chepstow, a couple from Ross, and even 1 or 2 from the Cheltenham area, but that was kind of as far as we could reach. But when COVID came along, it actually presented an opportunity to start a 4th group. And this time, no geographical boundaries meant that we could expand out quite easily. So, we ended up with members from Liverpool, Newport, Cardiff. We even had one from Sweden at one time. He was an English guy, but he was living in somewhere near Stockholm. I can't remember the name of the place. But so, it just broke down those boundaries, and that group took off very quickly. That was in 2020. And then in 2021, I thought, well, there's room for another group. So we started another one in April 2021. We seem to have maxed out on 5 groups now. I think it's kind of all leveled out. Networking's having a bit of a funny period at the moment, because obviously, you've got people who really like the live meetings, and then you've got people who find Zoom really convenient, and there's fors and against with both. But I think it's caused a few problems. Most of the other networking, local networking groups in the area sadly have fallen over, which is a shame, because we worked quite closely with them and helped each other. But sadly, that didn't sort of do the industry. I think long term, it's not done the industry the greatest good. But, there are still a lot of positives, and I always look at those and try and draw on those so that we can take it forward, because things will keep changing, Granger. As you know, nothing stays the same. You've got to drive everything, whatever business you're in. It doesn't go on autopilot. You don't just finally get there. You've got to keep driving and driving. You've got to keep making the changes, and that's what we've done. So, yeah.
So you currently got 5 groups, a mixture of face-to-face and Zoom ones, or what's the sort of mix?
Currently, at the moment, we're all on Zoom, except the Thursday group have a live meeting every 6 weeks.
Okay.
It's become very difficult because we had people joining the various groups from outside the area, so it's now become quite difficult to go back fully to live meetings.
Right.
But we're trying to compromise, and probably as time goes by, we'll probably compromise a little bit more and a little bit more, and we'll try and get it right for everyone. It's trying to, one thing I've learned over the past 10 years is managing people is not as easy as it looks from the outside, perhaps. There's a lot going on in the background, which I enjoy because it's a challenge, and you've got to have a challenge in your business. So, yes. We'll see how that pans out as time goes by.
And in terms of, is it a single seat type organization or multiple seats, or how do people select the CAP they wish to join, group they wish to join?
That's a good question, and there's no specific answer, because what I try to do with CAP, I think another thing that we try to do with CAP is we tend to run it on, we don't have too many rules and regulations. It's very relaxed, and we tend to run on common sense and respect. And that's worked very well. It doesn't work for everyone. As we know, there are people who would much prefer an organization like BNI, where there's lots of structure and lots of rules, which is right and proper for some people, but not for others. So what we do in CAP regarding that is, because if I take you back to when I was networking before CAP, you would have organizations like BNI, and I actually belonged to one called the BDC, the Business Development Club, and that would be one seat. So there was one seat per sector. And then you had 4 networking you could have 3 accountants and 2 graphic designers, and, anyone and everyone could come in. And some liked one way and some liked the other. So what I've done with CAP is whoever's first in. So, for instance, if you had an accountant and they wanted to be the only accountant, because they were first in, they're in control, and their decision is respected either way, and it's respected 100%. Whereas, a good example would be Rachel Bate from Rachel's Rambling Rovers. She's got a dog walking business, and she's very, very open to other dog walkers joining the group, and she sees it as an opportunity in a different way. She's very much on the collaboration side of things, and she's an amazing person, because if a new business starts up in her area, instead of saying, "Oh my God, I've got more competition," she goes to see them to see what she could do to help to make sure they're successful. And the reason she does that, she works very closely with about 4 or 5 different dog walking companies in the area. And the reason she does that is because if she wants to go on holiday, she's got people to call on to help look after her customers while she's away. If she just wants to take a day off, she can take a day off. And this came in very handy a couple of years back, because she actually broke her ankle. And as a dog walker, that's not the greatest thing to do. Now, if she hadn't collaborated, her competition could have pounced on her business, because it was going to be many weeks before, she went back to this. So instead, they all came in and said, "Right, what can we do, Rach? Which customers would you like us to look after until your ankle is healed?" And so that, so it works both ways, Granger, to be honest, and I fully understand both ways. I get where people are coming from. The one thing we have got is diversity in the membership. And so I kind of give them, so the long answer is, as it turned out to be, the long answer is yes and no.
No, it's very interesting in terms of that, and we can be worried about our competition, but actually, if you bring your competition in around you, you can actually, as a small business, you can help and grow. And I was talking to a very small HR company recently, and they did exactly that. They reached out to all their local competition and got to know them as part of their values, because that's values and principles they have. And they've actually built a collaboration capability, and they can offload and help each other out now in terms of training and functions. So actually, that example is actually a really good example yet again of if you think different, if you go for it different, then you'll create that different environment that allows collaboration to create and be successful for you. So really interesting example, and I think that's the power of what you've created through your CAP business clubs. So
it seems to work.
Yeah. No. So tell me about your customers then. Who comes to CAP? You've talked about sole traders, but what sort of people come? Is there a specific type, or
I think, again, that's a really difficult one to answer, because this as we're going back to this diversity, it's incredible. We've got very young people who are just starting out in business, some older people who are just starting out in business, but we've also got very experienced businesses, and that in itself works really well. because when somebody's just starting out in business, they obviously need to learn, but also they need the services of the other members as well. And the nice thing about networking, one of the nicest things I found about networking is whoever you work with within a networking group is always going to do a good job for you, because it's in their interest, because they've got to face you every week. So, yes. You're always going to find that the type of people who network are very trustworthy and very reliable and very efficient on the whole. We have, and the strangest thing is sometimes you get a new member and they can be very young and new to business, and they can say something and you think, oh my God, I've been in business all these years and they've just said something. Why didn't I think of that? So you get, so it's mostly sole traders. We've got quite a few businesses in CAP that employ a few people, but they tend to be, sole traders and very small businesses. So that's kind of where we are with CAP. We haven't got any, there's no large corporate organizations. That's probably another networking group that specializes in that.
And in terms of that, are they, sole traders? Is it all types of sole traders that turn up in terms of doing things, or is it specific types of sole traders that reach out and look for that type of networking?
No, I think we've got, the wellness sector, and we've got, Rachel's Rambley Rovers, dog walking. We've got accountants. We've got solicitors. We've got a full range, people who sell insurance. We've got IFAs. We've got, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now. We've got people who are very experienced in Excel. They're Excel experts. We've got kind of a really good range of businesses, and you never know what's coming next. We've had mediators and all sorts of different strange businesses over the years. Not particularly strange, but businesses you wouldn't expect at a networking meeting.
Yeah.
So,
and in terms of, we talked about your change to move to Zoom caused by the pandemic. Did that change the mix of people at all, do you think, or has it always remained where you were when you were face to face through to where you are today?
I don't think it changed that much. I think. Not particularly for the pandemic. I think there's certain times I've noticed that, a while ago we've got 5 clubs and we had a mortgage advisor in every club, and now we've only got 2. So, and then another time, you've got 1 or 2 accountants, and suddenly every club's got an accountant. And there was a period of time, especially during the pandemic earlier, the first sort of 18 months of the pandemic, there was quite an influx in the wellness sector, because obviously people were kind of, quite down in the dumps for one reason or another. So there seemed to be, and then you've got people like the utility warehouse distributors. There's a lot of those in CAP now, because there's big opportunity for them, because obviously there's problems with the cost of energy these days. So they're able to help more people now. So, they tend to be doing more networking. So sometimes, it can be a little bit more specific depending on what's happening outside in the wider world.
Brilliant. So we've got a really good understanding of your business and who turns up to CAP, and let's talk about the journey that you've been on in terms of the business, because our ScaleUp Radio is about understanding, your experience and helping our audience understand that. So let's look at some of, through the journey of CAP, and maybe you even talked about you had a marketing business before that. Give us some examples. What things went right and what things went wrong? What would you redo if you were to start again, type thing?
Over the years, I've been working for myself since I could drive. As soon as I could drive, I bought a van and started delivering things and selling things, and I guess I've only really had one big regret, and that was when I was in my 20s, and I'd started a drinks business, and it was a door-to-door business. It was very popular back then. There was a lot of door-to-door. All the milk was delivered and the bread was delivered and all sorts of things. And I did one with soft drinks, and it took off really quickly. And I started taking on, I got a little bit of a warehouse going, and I took on staff, and I had drivers and I had van boys, and it just seemed to, it was just so easy to build. And then I got it to a stage where I found that I was really badly stressed out because I thought at the time I was blaming everyone else. Why don't you drive the vans properly, and why don't you do this, and why don't you do that? And of course, you look back a few years later and you realize, hands up, I really cocked up there. It was entirely my fault, and I've missed a golden opportunity. But I'm going back to I don't know, I was in my 20s, I guess the late 80s, maybe just the beginning of the 90s, and I really missed a big opportunity there because I didn't have the help and support. I didn't think about networking then. I did everything Paul way, and I expected everyone else to do the same. I didn't have all the good advice that I would, if this would have happened now, it would have been a very, very different story. And, long story short, I shrunk it back in the end to just me. Because I couldn't take the stress, and that nobody else was good enough, and as I say, I did have to put my hands up in the end and thought, you really cocked up a golden opportunity there. I had that business for 17 years. I really loved it, and it made me good money, and but I had a golden opportunity that hasn't really come along since. Not for something to grow that quickly and that easily. So that's my kind of big regret in business. Otherwise, to that, I've kind of really I always try and enjoy everything I do. Whether it's the marketing business, I had no experience in marketing. It was a franchise, so I had lots of backup and lots of help. And I learned very quickly, and I really enjoyed it. But I always think, you've got to have fun at work. You've got to enjoy what you do, because if you don't have fun at work, it's just work. And, we spend a lot of time there. So you've got to enjoy what you do. And CAP, I always say I've got the best job in the world because I get to meet up with dozens of positive people every single week. So, it's an absolute joy. It has its moments, and there are times when I think, oh my God, I've got things to sort out here that I really would rather just hide under the table. But, for the vast majority of the time, I've got the best job in the world. So, my advice to everyone is enjoy what you do. Enjoy what you do.
So, thank you for your honesty about, in terms of the business that stressed you out in terms of that. And you had to scale it back in terms of doing it. So what did you learn then? Looking back now, what's your sort of key learnings for that you've taken forwards into your future endeavors where you are now?
Well, I think, it was, looking back now, it was the lack of support. And It was the lack of knowledge. And, and as I say, I was trying to do everything Paul way. And Paul way was good for some things, but not others. Yeah. And so when I one of the things I love about CAP is I can put that experience to people now, and I can kind of like talk about it with a genuine honesty, and people realize, and they think, actually, I'm trying to do all this myself, and I should be outsourcing this, or I should be working with this person. I say back then you would never have got me at a network meeting. I probably didn't even know they existed actually back as far as that. But it wasn't until 2007 that I went kicking and screaming to my first network meeting. And, that's a whole story within itself, because we'd bought, me and Sharon, my wife, we'd bought a marketing franchise, the Best of the Forest of Dean, which I've mentioned, I think. And there were about 300 of these franchises around the country. And we were really lucky because some of the neighbouring ones, the Best of Gloucester and the Best of Cheltenham and Bristol, and they were all really successful, and they were already doing really well. So we went to see them to get some advice before we started ourselves. And they all said, without exception, go networking. You need to go networking. You need to make these connections, and it'll really help you to learn and build your business. And I remember coming home from Gloucester, and we'd gone to see Clive and Carol Hannis, who was running the Best of Gloucester, and they were really, really good. And they'd given us all this advice. And I remember saying to my wife, I love the advice they've given, and I'm going to take it all except for that networking thing. I'm just not going networking because, I remember what I said, Granger. I actually said networking is for knobs. And that was my exact words. So Sharon and I had a discussion, which, we had an argument, and I lost. And I agreed to go networking. I thought, you know what, I'll go and I'll prove that, prove that I'm right. That this wouldn't be for me, and it'll just be full of big egos and big I ams, and I'll prove I'm right, and then I'll come back and then I can just put this to bed for good. And of course, I went along, and it was full of lovely people, and they were really helpful. And the rest is history. I joined several groups, and I really enjoyed my networking journey. So, and now I run my own clubs.
And businesses come to me, small businesses that are starting out, maybe a year old, and I will always say that for a small business, your initial market is your networking. It's the people that you meet and their networks that you connect into to initially grow, because most businesses don't have the capital behind them to build the marketing campaigns and the structures that they need to grow as they become bigger, and they need to increase their reach because they can no longer network in far away reaches of the country there, so etc. in terms of doing things. So it becomes very important then beyond there. But that first initial build is all around networking. So yeah, it was great that you came across that. And yes, networking is for knobs, but not anymore. Yeah.
I feel so embarrassed about that I even thought that now, and it just turned out to be the total opposite. And many of those connections. In fact, the guy I share my office with now, he was at the very first network meeting back in 2007, and he's been a great connection ever since. So it isn't just for what you get this week, next week, and the week after. You can go back many years, and you've got some great connections you can call on. It might be that you're just going to call someone up to just get some advice, but they're always happy to give it to you. And just going back to the previous story about failing at a business that should have been huge, if I'd have just had the team around me now that I had now, it would have been so easy. But
so you bought this marketing business, a franchise, and you grew that. How big did that get? Do you have employees that time round? Did you grow much?
No, basically I fronted it, and my wife did all the admin, all the back. All the kind of stuff that goes on in the background, so all the hard work. And unfortunately, not too long after we took on the business, she was diagnosed with quite a serious medical condition, and unfortunately, her energy levels dropped to the floor, and we really struggled. And we talked about, kind of like I was going to carry it on, perhaps. And then in the end, I said, no, do you know what? I think we'll sell it and maybe take a break for a little while and kind of process what's happening. Which we did, and then that was then a year later. That was when I ended up at the main place with the marketing contract. Yes. So Cap Business Clubs was born from there. So I guess it was all meant to be.
Yes, definitely. So you've taken us through some of your experience, etc. Some of the key tactics that you use. How do you stop from getting overwhelmed?
I think first of all, it's difficult to get overwhelmed when you're around, a whole heap of positive people. And if I do have, sometimes, we all have our wobbly moments. I've got people I can really sort of turn to. I try to be sensible. I try to shut off and work. So, a certain time of day, I go, that's it. I don't answer the phone now. I take it easy. I try and spend more time with the family these days. And COVID taught me quite a few lessons with that it is, wise to, I've got a couple of daughters and I've got 6 grandchildren and 2 great grandchildren. So, I try to spend more time with them these days. And I think that's good for your mental health overall. I've been a little bit guilty in the past of putting business first, but if I can say one thing today, don't ignore the other stuff. It's really important, and actually ultimately it will help you with your business because it puts you in a better frame of mind. But I don't have too many issues. I've got a little bit older and a little bit wiser, Granger, so I'm quite good at letting things go over my head, and I think I've got an understanding of people, perhaps a better understanding of people now, because you've got to remember, even when somebody says something a bit sharp or something maybe a little bit out of turn, they might be just having a bad day. Something's happened to them. Everyone's in a certain place at a certain time. And so I try, I always endeavor to ensure I'm aware of that at all times, because, people I work on the premise that 95% of people are nice anyway. So, it's only that odd 5%. And the media make that sound like a lot more, but it's not really. Most people are nice. So so I try to let let things go over my head a little bit and not to get too offended.
Excellent. So one of the things in businesses, we know there's always too much to do. Yeah, we've always got lots of ideas and everything else. So how do you keep focused on the right things for your business and right things for you?
Well, actually, funny enough, it was from I'm quite good at kind of prioritizing now, because a meeting that we had probably 4 or 5 years ago at CAP, one of the members did a meeting, and it was on useful software and things that they used in their business. And one was Google Keep. And the great thing about Google Keep is it's free. It's excellent. It works on all platforms, and it's really useful. And what you can do, what I do is I kind of keep a list of my to-do list is kind of on there, but I color code it. And that came from another presentation to color code things from another member just last year. Last year or the year before, to color code things in priorities. Because what I tend to do in the past, I should say, is if I've got a to-do list, I will pick the easiest things, the things I can tick off the quickest. So now when it's color coded, so orange, for instance, means it wants doing today or tomorrow at the latest. If it's yellow, it wants doing within the next week, maybe just into the following week. And if it's in cream, then that's nothing particularly urgent, and often those even get knocked off the list. But what it makes me do is when I come in, I've got a little pad by the side of my computer. When I come in, I switch that on, and I know anything in orange I must do today. So it really helps me to keep organized. And I even irritate myself sometimes, because I even keep on top of my accounts these days, which one time was totally unheard of. But that came from a presentation at CAP about spreadsheets and how to keep an easy track of your accounts. I can do my accounts now, in my monthly accounts, in 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. And at the end of the year, I just hand over a spreadsheet to my accountant, and it keeps my bills down. Before I would check everything in a big pile and worry about it, and then take a big bag of stuff in, and the accountant would charge me a fortune for sorting it out. So I've become more organized, and that helps a lot. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, because sometimes there is a lot to do, but nothing in the world's perfect. But I've got better. I think I've got better at it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah, and it was going to be my next question about keeping on top of cash, because actually cash is the lifeblood of any business, and making sure that it's up to date, knowing where it is, what we've got to pay, what we haven't paid, etc., is a vitally important aspect of any business. And you probably know there's so many business owners that just don't get that bit, but actually it's not complicated, is it? And you've just demonstrated that you've learned from somebody else who came along and said, this is how you can simply use spreadsheets, and you talked about it in such a calm way. That was a really good demonstration of how you can learn from others and put things right in your business to make it simple. So,
well, it's lovely, Granger, because it isn't just the fact that you keep on top of your accounts, but as you just quite rightly said, you can actually keep an eye on your accounts, because it's very easy. You can see the profit and loss for this month is this. And then, you can have a look at your kind of month on month page and just see, well, yeah, we did a little bit better, or this month is always quiet, because after a while you get a collection of these. I've been doing this for a few years now. So, this month's quiet. So maybe that's time I could spend on marketing, maybe, or maybe I can improve that month by marketing a little bit heavier a couple of months before, whichever way you want to look at it. But it gives you the opportunity to keep an eye on things. Whereabouts before, I'm going back a few years ago now, but before it was kind of like, I think I'm doing all right, but I don't really know.
Yeah. So you mentioned marketing. So what's successful marketing for you? What works? What are your key tactics?
Recently with CAP, it's kind of, to be honest, I think word of mouth is just the best thing in the world. We do some marketing on social media. I'm not very good at that, so I get someone else to do it for me. I wouldn't say we get the greatest success of it. It's always it's very difficult to measure. But word of mouth is just the best thing in the world, because if a member is recommending to someone to come along to CAP, straight away, the visitor is going to kind of like have a good idea. Oh, well, actually, it must be okay, because they go and they come along and they enjoy the meeting, and sometimes they join, and sometimes they don't for various reasons. But it's always good to have a guest. But recently we did what we called it CAP Discovery, because there are probably a lot of people out there who were very similar to myself with misconceptions or preconceptions of, what networking is. Or maybe they're a little bit worried because, they're scared because, they don't want to do their 1 minute introduction because they're very shy. They might be an introvert. So there's all sorts of reasons why people don't come along. So it was an idea of a member, one of my members last year said, why don't you have a CAP discovery where, people can come along onto a Zoom meeting. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. And you just talk about CAP and we'll help you. We'll come on with you. There was 3 or 4 members help me out, which was really nice. And the nice thing about that is I could have asked any one of dozens of them and they'd have all done the same. It was lovely. But they came along and we kind of just told stories about CAP, and it was just half an hour. It was quick. It was sharp. And we signed up some members on the back of that. And we plan to do another one. In fact, we plan to do them every quarter because they were so successful. And I think it was because there was no pressure for anyone. So it was quite nice to do that, and we'll develop it. We made some mistakes, and there are things that we could improve on. So as the quarters go by, hopefully they'll become even more successful.
And you mentioned about your family and how important they are, and grandchildren and everything else. I'm also told that you play in a band. So tell us about that. What's that?
Right.
Please?
Well, that's something else that came along quite by accident. I was probably in my early 30s, and a friend of mine bought a drum kit. So I started visiting him more often because I just quite liked the idea of it. He taught me a bit. In the end, I kind of got my own drum kit, and just for fun, and just put it in my garage and just learned to play along to songs. And then one day I was out talking to someone and they said, don't know any drummers, do you? We're starting a band and we need a drummer. And I found myself saying, oh, I'm a drummer. And of course I wasn't really, but I was just playing for fun. And I ended up going for an audition, and the audition went particularly badly. And I thought they'd say at the end, oh, yeah, well, thanks for coming, Paul. We'll let you know. And they didn't. They said, are you willing to learn? And I said, yeah. And they said, okay, come back next week. So I went back the following week, and long story short, 3 months later, we did our first gig. We learned 12 songs. We played them once, took a break, and played them again. But I was with that band for 3 years before it broke up. Unfortunately, we lost the guitarist to a motorbike accident in the Isle of Man. He was racing at the TT racing, and he had a wall at 120 mile an hour. So that was the end of him. And then the lead singer had a bit later in the year, the lead singer had a heart attack and had to have a triple bypass. So that kind of came to an end. But I started up another band because I got the bug for it. And I've probably been playing for about 25 years now, and every year I think, no, do you know what? I probably should retire this year. And I get to the end of the year and go, nah, one more year. And I've been doing that for ages, so I don't know what'll happen. But we still enjoy it. We had a gig last weekend, and it was, the pub was packed, and we had a great night. And I think, no, I'll keep going for a little bit longer.
And the name of your band
is Echo Bandits. Echo Bandits. Yeah. Well, the second band I was in lasted for 10 years, and I really enjoyed it. But it came to an abrupt end, and I thought, well, do you know what? I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm so lucky, because in that band, I played the drums for the first 3 or 4 years, and then I started fronting the band and singing and playing guitar, and learned a bit of guitar and stuff like that. And I thought, I've done everything I wanted, and that's it. And then so I kind of retired, and then I had a phone call off a local musician who I admired very much, and he said, I'm starting a band, and I hear you're free now. Do you fancy coming along and singing? And once again, it was the same thing, really, Granger. I went, and because he'd been in bands before, I had great singers, and I went for the audition, and I thought they'd say, oh, thanks for coming, but but they didn't. They said, yep, let's do it. And I've been with them for 10 or 11 years now, and they're just a great band. But they were someone, they were players in there that I really admired and kind of aspired to. And they always say, you should mix with people who are better than you. And I did that with all 3 bands, and I think that does you a lot of good. So
no, that's probably very true in all parts of life, including business life. Mixing with people with more experience helps you to understand. So, wow, brilliant. So let's go forward in time 5 years, okay? And we're going to be sitting here having a discussion about the next 5 years that's just happened, i.e., just finished. So what do you think has happened for you both professionally and personally to say those were 5 great years for us?
I think first and foremost, I just hope I continue to be generally a happy chappy, because I think that's really, really important. And I would love to still be running CAP business clubs, and I'm sure that I will. I do have lots of hopes and aspirations for it. Obviously, we don't know what the future is going to be, and as I said earlier, you've got to adjust, and you've got to move with the times. I do think that the times are going to move very, very quickly, because technology is changing at quite a rapid rate now, and fortunately, I have quite an interest in that, so I'm keeping an eye on it. So, even though I'm a relatively old guy now, I still feel that there's going to be many opportunities coming. There's going to be a lot of changes, and maybe some things I'll have a little whine at, because I'm kind of allowed to be a grumpy old man, as we were saying before the podcast, occasionally. But I'd still like to think that the opportunities will be there, and that CAP business clubs may not be in the format that it's in now. Who would have thought 3 years ago that we would all be on Zoom? So there's the metaverse is going to change a lot of things, and there's all sorts of computing advancements at the moment that seem to be taking a huge leap forward. So I'm quite excited with all of it. There's some bits that's a bit scary, I guess, but that's going to be the same for everyone. But yeah, 5 years time, let's go with the flow, find out what happens, take the opportunities when they come. And in the meantime, just carry on enjoying myself. Sounds like a good plan.
Paul, well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been fascinating in terms of, to understand your background, in terms of how you built one business and that didn't work out, in terms of fail. Then you moved your soft drinks business, you moved into a marketing business and grew that until situations changed, and how you fell into networking off the back of an opportunity. And a number of times you've talked about just embracing those opportunities that come along. And I often say that, just go for it, say yes, and work out the rest afterwards in terms of doing
yeah, absolutely.
And it's a fantastic story of how you've actually grown and developed your own knowledge and skills through everybody you've met through the CAP business activities and meeting people, and how they've enriched your business life and your personal life in terms of doing things. So, and you've just really demonstrated, the power of networking is not just about finding opportunities to grow your business. It's actually the amazing rich people that you meet and the ability that they can enrich and bring to your lives. And you've demonstrated that beautifully in everything you've said today in terms of doing things. So we're going to finish off with our quick fire round. Okay. So, as short answers as you can. Right. So off we go. If you could go back to the younger you, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, first of all, I'd apologize. What advice would I give myself? Basically, I'd listen to other people and find people that are good at things and learn from them. And that was my failing, because I thought I knew everything. I guess you do when you're young, and then you realize as you get a bit older, nope. But I would be taking more advice.
Okay, which books do you recommend?
I quite like Jack Canfield, Chicken Soul for the Soup. This is very good. There's a guy called Viktor Frankl. I think it's Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was he was in the German concentration camps and survived that. And his book is just totally amazing. And everyone should read that. And then they might stop you from doing quite so much whining. But he's a marvelous example. And Think and Grow Rich, that one's for everyone, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, very good book. I'd agree with all of those, actually. I know those well. On our mobile phones, we all have lots of apps. Which apps are the best ones for you? Which ones make a difference for you?
Well, definitely Google Keep. That's definitely one. I've also got a Your Calendar widget on my phone, which I use all the time, which I find is really, really useful. Besides that, for business, obviously, if you're not using banking apps, please do use them, because they're 10 times quicker than using your PC. And besides that, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I wish I could turn my phone on, but I've switched it off.
All right. So my favorite question now: who's had the most influence on you as a business leader?
Oh, that over the years, that's varied quite a lot. I don't know whether you've heard a guy called Bob Proctor. I think he's very, very good. I think we can all learn quite a lot from Elon Musk. There's again a very, very difficult one off the cuff. Eckhart Tolle as well is another one I listen to, which is very, very different, but he has a great message. And I would definitely listen to and read some of Eckhart Tolle's books as well.
And finally, Paul, how can people get hold of you?
It's very easy. I think the best way to do it is to just go on to www.capbusinessclubs.co.uk. Have a look around, have a look at the type of members we've got. Some of the stuff I've talked about today, and some of the members are on there, and you'll see the kind of diversity that we've got there. But all the other contact details are there as well, and you'll probably get a good flavour of the kind of thing that we do at CAP.
Super. Paul, thank you very much for this conversation. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.